Hello, Senior School. Today we're going to talk about chords, specifically triads. Now, I really hope that you went back and watched the interval video that I posted today. The reason is it's going to help you better understand how intervals work, and you're going to see in a minute how critically important understanding intervals is in order to create chords. So, basic definition of a chord. A chord is a combination of three or more notes. Okay, chords are built off of a single note called the root. The root is the name of the chord as well. So in this lesson right now, we're going to talk about triads. Every triad is created with a root, a third, and a fifth. So in this example, you can see that I've got the root, which is the lowest note, and it's a C. I go up a third to the next line. I have an E, and then I go up to the next line, which is a fifth away from the root, and that is on G. So the notes that I have here are C, E, and G. The first type of triad we're going to talk about is called a major triad. A major triad is built with a major third and a perfect fifth from the root, and it's going to make a happy sound when played. So first we're going to write a C major triad. First we're going to write the letter C. We're going to put in the note name C. Then we're just going to slap the third and the fifth on top. I don't know if they need to be flattened, I don't know if they need to be sharpened, or if they can stay the way they are. Right now we're not going to worry about that. We just want to get the generic third and fifth from the root written on the staff. Now we can use a keyboard, or I'll show you another trick in a minute, but first let's use a keyboard to see if we can determine the specific intervals. So we need to go up a major third, which is 4 half steps away from whatever our root note is. So C, 1 to C sharp, 2 to D, 3 to D sharp, and then finally 4 to E. We do the same thing, but a few more half steps for the fifth. We know a fifth is 7 half steps away, so we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is our F sharp, and 7, which is our G. So we need the 4th half step away, and we need the 7th half step away, and those are all white keys. The chord contains no black keys, meaning sharps or flats. So we don't need to write any accidentals for a C major chord. Therefore, a C major triad is C, E, and G. Next, let's go ahead and try a different triad, one that includes accidentals in it. Let's do an E flat major triad. So once again, we're going to slap the third and fifth on the staff. E flat is our root. Then we're just going to stick G and B on top. And we're going to count 4 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4 takes us to G. And then we're going to count 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 takes us to B flat. Oh, we actually have a black key in this one, so we're going to write in that accidental, B flat. That means that our E flat major triad is going to be E flat, G, B flat. Now, let's get away from flats for a minute and let's try a B major triad, B major. Start with our root note. Remember, the root is always the same as the name of the chord. Slap in our third and fifth. Count the major third, which is 4 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4 takes us to D sharp, and then 5, 6, 7 for our fifth, our perfect fifth, takes us to F sharp. So we know that 2 of our third and our fifth are both on black keys, which means they need to have an accidental. And since we are working in a key that has sharps, we're going to go ahead and put sharps into there rather than flats. So now our B major triad is going to be B, D sharp, and F sharp. Now really quick, that's an easy way to learn how to do that, but in my opinion, that's kind of the long way to do it. So I'm going to go back a couple steps here. I'm going to go back to that E flat major triad we were looking at before. Okay, so we have an E flat major triad. It's going to be major, which means it's going to be a happy sound. Now, if we're ever making a major triad, in my opinion, the best and fastest way to make it a major triad is to just think about the key signature for that chord. So we know that E flat, the E flat key, has an E flat, an A flat, and a B flat in it already. So all we have to do is put the third and the fifth on the staff, and then we have to think to ourselves, Are any of those two notes I just added flat in the key of E flat? Well, the answer is yes. G is not flat, but B is. So all we have to do is add that flat. I don't have to count to 7. I don't have to count to 4. I don't have to do any counting or do anything the long way. I just have to think about the key signature. I know in the key of E flat, there's a B flat, an E flat, and an A flat. If any of those notes show up in any of the chords in that key, then I need to make sure they have their correct accidental. So an E flat major triad is E flat, G, and B flat. Let's do that the way I just showed you one more time, but let's go back to C. Okay, so we started with a C and then we put an E and a G on top. We know that in the key of C, there's no sharps and no flats. So I'm not going to need to add an accidental no matter what. And if it's a C major triad, then I know that I don't need to add a flat or sharp to E and a flat or sharp to G. I just need to put those notes in. That tells me that I'm going to have a major chord. So I hope and wonder if that trick will help you. It certainly helped me when I first learned how chords worked. And if you're more familiar with keys, you can even do the same kind of math with the key of B. Now, the key of B is a kind of a stinky key. It's got 5 sharps in it. It's a difficult key to play in because the more sharps and flats you add to something on piano or another instrument, the more challenging it becomes to play. So in the key of B, we have 5 sharps: F, C, G, D, and A. Now let's build our chord again and add the D and the F on top. Are either of those sharp in the key of B? Well, yeah, I just said 2 of them were. D and F are both sharp in the key of B. So I don't have to count, I just got to slap those in, and I know that that's a B flat major chord. So that's a quick trick to figuring out how major chords work. Okay, now we're going to quickly talk about minor chords, and then we're going to talk about augmented and diminished chords. We're not going to spend a lot of time on augmented and diminished. We're going to spend more time on these 2 ideas first. But let's talk about the minor triad. Now, the minor triads are in some ways even easier to make than major triads. If you have a major chord and you know for sure that it's major, all you have to do is take that third, that middle note, and lower it down a half step. That will create your minor chord. So for example, C major, we know is C, E, and G. If we lower the E down a half step to E flat, now we have C, E flat, G. We all of a sudden just created a C minor chord. All it takes is one tiny little change to completely change the sound. So they're going to have us build a C minor triad as an example. We slap the 3rd and 5th on there. Great. Now we're going to go look at the piano on the right. Start at the C, count up 3. So we're going to count up 3 instead of 4, and we get E flat. Going to count up 7 again because it still has its perfect 5th, and we have the G like normal. We have 1 accidental. We're going to add that in. Like I said, you just lower the 3rd a half step, and that's what makes the chord minor. Now they're going to do the same thing with an E flat minor triad. Start with E flat, toss in the G and the B, count up 3, or just do what you know is major and go down a half step, like I told you. We now know that we've got 3 half steps away is G flat, 7 half steps away is B flat. All we did, though, was lower the 3rd to make it minor. E flat, G flat, and B flat. Lastly, let's look at the B minor triad. We're going to stick the generic ones on there. If you remember the B major triad from before, it had a D sharp and an F sharp. So what would we do? Let's see if you can figure it out before I click the next slide. You know that we need to lower the 3rd, and we knew that the 3rd was a D sharp. So what is it going to be when we lower it? We know the F sharp's going to stay the same. The 5th doesn't change. So let's go ahead and take a look at that together. Well, we're counting out 3 steps now instead of 4. 1, 2, 3. It's on the D natural. We only have 1 accidental because we lowered the 3rd by a half step. And that tells us that the B minor triad is B, D, and F sharp. That D sharp went from a D sharp to a D. Okay, so recap minor triads. They're easy to build if you understand how major triads work. A minor triad is going to be the same thing as its major counterpart, except you lower the middle note, the 3rd, by a half step. In this case, we went from B, D sharp, F sharp to B, D, F sharp to change the 2 from major to minor. It's amazing how 2 completely different sounds have such a close relationship with one another. we're going to move on to two more triads. We have an Augmented Triad and a Diminished Triad. First, let's talk about the Augmented Triad. Now, the Augmented Triad is also easy to figure out if you understand major chords. All we do to make a major chord an augmented chord is we extend the fifth note another half step. So for example, let's build a C Augmented Triad. First, we need to make it major. C, E, and G. Easy. Okay? But now we need to make it augmented. Instead of counting 7 half steps, we're going to count 8. Count up 8. Now we're on a black key. So we've made this G extend a half step into G sharp. So that shows us that our augmented triads are C, E, and then the fifth extended 1 half step sharp. Augmented means it's been made bigger. They've just drawn the notes out a little bit. Okay? We're going to go ahead and try an E flat Augmented Triad. Start on the E flat, add the third and fifth. We know the major third is a G. We're not changing that. However, we know with an Augmented Triad, the fifth is going to go out an additional half step, counting 8 half steps to E. We got E, F, G, A, B. So instead of a B flat, we're going to have a B natural. We're going to try the B Augmented Triad now. Third and fifth on top. Now, a major triad for B would be B, D sharp, F sharp. We're going to figure out the middle by counting 4, and then we're going to figure out the fifth by counting out 8 half steps to a new natural note. We're raising the F sharp up a half step. Now, this is a weird example, and it's something that I will explain more later, but the accidental here is actually called double sharp because we're going from F sharp to F sharper, which is actually just a G, but we don't want to change what the chord looks like. We want it to stay in its nice stacked thirds, so we're going to write an X there that represents double sharp. Don't worry about that. You're not going to be quizzed on it, but I just want you to understand that that is how the augmented chords work. The fifth is extended a half step. The last one we're going to talk about is the Diminished Triad. This is like the opposite of augmented. This is extra minor, so to speak. Okay? So it's built with a minor third and a diminished fifth. So we write out the minor chord, and then we do the opposite of what we did with the augmented chord. We've reduced the fifth by a half step instead. So C diminished is going to start with a C minor chord, C, E flat, G, and then we're going to lower that G down a half step, and instead it's going to be C, E flat, G flat. So when we change the pitches of the middle note and the fifth note, we're going to create these different kinds of chords just by adding or lowering a half step. Finally, let's look at E flat, third and fifth on top, count 3 half steps to get minor, then 6 half steps to get diminished. And now we have another funky one, right? Because the E flat major chord was E flat, G, B flat. The E flat minor chord was E flat, G flat, B flat. And now we're going diminished. We're going to add another half step lower on the fifth. We actually have what's called a double flat. Double flat works the same way as a double sharp, except in the opposite direction. So instead of writing out the note A there, we want to keep our thirds nice and separated, line, line, line. So we're going to have a double sharp symbol instead. Although it's important to understand that B double flat, B double flat is the same thing as an A. So that's our final E flat diminished triad. One more. We're going to build B diminished. First we do B to F like normal. We know that a major B major chord will have B, D sharp, F sharp. We're going to do the minor though, which lowers our D sharp a half step down to D. So we have B, then D, and then we're going to count 6 half steps from our B to get a nice natural F. None of these half steps are on black keys, so there's no accidentals needed, and our B diminished triad is just B, D, and F, which is a fairly normal looking chord, but it sounds very strange. If you have a piano at home, I encourage you to try it. So as a reference for you, this chart kind of explains these triads. We have major, augmented, minor, and diminished. and it shows the position or the interval you need from the root to each of these notes. So for major, it's root to major third for the second note, perfect fifth for the fifth. Minor is root, then a minor third, then a perfect fifth. Augmented is root, major third, augmented fifth. Diminished is root, minor third, diminished fifth. Another way you can think about these chords is thinking of major and minor as what they are, happy, sad. Think of augmented as extra happy and diminished as extra sad. Okay, that's how composers use these chords in their music. Now, I'm not gonna quiz you today on augmented and diminished, but I am gonna have you take a little quiz on musictheory.net about major and minor and how to identify them. So after you're done watching this video, click on the link to the quiz below it, and I want you to try and take that quiz. Send me your initial score, either on Seesaw or private message me on Teams what you got. After you do that, I want you to then go back to the quiz, and I want you to try it again and try to get as good of a score as you can. Okay? So the order of events for today should have been, you watched the interval video that I posted, and then you watched this video, and then you took the music theory quiz. That's all I'm expecting from you today. I will also post today what I expect you to do for your playing this week, and that's going to be due Thursday because Friday is a holiday. Everything this week is due Thursday. Okay, guys, good luck. I wish you the best. I hope you are able to identify your major and your minor chords. Okay, I know I just said goodbye, but I realized there's one more thing we really quickly need to talk about. Now, this is something we've talked about before. I know that I've talked about it with at least 8th grade and 9th grade, so 7th grade, pay attention because this is important to what we'll be doing later at the end of the term for your final project. Okay, on a scale, I talked about scale degrees already with you. Every note in the scale is set to a scale degree or a number. We use Roman numerals to identify those scale degrees, and those also apply to chords, to triads, what we just talked about. So, for example, each diatonic triad, that's each one in a key in a scale, is going to be identified by a Roman numeral. The first one is the Roman numeral for 1, the second one is 2, and blah, 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 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it keeps going. Now, what the Roman numeral scale, though, for each triad type is it changes. So major triads in a major key are all going to be capital. If it's a minor triad, it's going to be lowercase. If it's augmented, it will have the major sign plus a little plus sign. And then diminished chords will be a lowercase with a circle. So we're going to apply Roman numerals to the C major scale. This is a common scale lots of people use to play in, and it's the key you're going to be using to do your final project in, so it's good for us to get familiar with it. We have all of the diatonic triads, all of the chords written out for the key of C. The order in a major key will always be the same. So the first, the fourth, the fifth, and the eighth are always going to be major chords. So we just look at the bottom note to determine what kind of major it is. We have C major, F major, G major, and back up to a higher version of C major. The second, third, and sixth are always going to be minor chords. D, E, and A. That's in the key of C. D, E, and A are always going to be minor. And then lastly, the seventh chord is always going to be B, or is always going to be a diminished chord. So in our case, this is a B diminished chord, which we actually constructed earlier. So first triad is major, so it's the Roman numeral for it is going to be uppercase. Second triad, third triad are both minor, so they're going to be lowercase Roman numerals. The fourth and fifth are major, so they get capital Roman numerals. The sixth is a minor, so it's lowercase. The seventh is diminished, so it's minor with the little degree symbol or the little circle. And then the very last triad of a major scale is going to be the same as the first. So we're only going to worry about the triads when it comes to major scales and when it comes to minor scales. So we have C minor written out. Don't worry about the key signature. I just want to help you understand how these minor scales work. You might actually see a pattern if you're really smart. So the first is always minor in a minor scale. The second is always diminished. The third is always major. The fourth and fifth are always minor. The sixth and seventh are always major. And then the last triad is the same as the first. It's minor. So there's other ways to apply those. There's also C harmonic minor, but we're not going to worry about that right now. There's C melodic minor, and then there's these things called inversions, but we're not going to talk about inversions till next week, so we're going to skip ahead. And I want you to look at this reference. This is just for you. Okay, if you ever need help or need to screenshot this for later, this is a reference to you as to what the qualities of each of these chords are depending on the type of key, if it's a major key or a minor key. So what we're going to focus on primarily is major, but I am going to throw a few natural minor key things in there in the quiz today. So anyway, like I said previously, take the quiz, send me your best score. Okay, this really is the ending. Thank you.